Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. On behalf of the entire team of Maastricht, I would like to welcome you to today's session, the Association Knowledge Mixer. My name is Anouk Maas, and I'm from the Maastricht Convention Bureau. I have the honor today to guide you through our session and to introduce you to our panel and our host. Before I introduce you to our panel and our host, I would like to welcome you to the studio of Mac Maastricht, because today we are live in the studio of Mac Maastricht. This year marks a huge shift in our history. Mac is currently in the last phase of its expansion and renovation and aiming to give the delegates the feeling of outdoors by allowing natural daylight to reach almost every corner of the facility. It also has a very open and interconnected character. We chose to let this open and interconnected character flow through today's session as well. Therefore, we are only with a small group of people, giving us the possibility to perfectly share knowledge and experience during our session, during the presentation, and during the live panel discussion. In Maastricht, we believe innovations are key in order to stay relevant. Also, innovations are essential to the recovery of our industry. So let's deep dive into the world of innovations and how to keep your business model healthy for the years to come. I am honored to introduce you to our first guest, Pamela Habibovic. Pamela is a professor of inorganic biomaterials and director of the Merlin Institute in Maastricht. Next to Pamela is Erik Biese. Erik Biese is professor in experimental vascular pathology in the Maastricht University Medical Center. Both Pamela and Erik organized a large and impactful congress in Maastricht a few years ago of more than 1,500 people. Well, and before I introduce you to today's host, I would like to share some house rules. We will record this session to share it afterwards. Also, if you do have any technical issues, please put it in the chat. And if you need some help, just put it in the chat. In addition, if you have any questions during this session, also do not hesitate to put your questions in the chat. I will make sure they will answer it during this session. Then, next to me, there is Damien Nunes. Damien is our innovation expert from the Maastricht University. Damien focuses on improving and developing new service propositions and strategies for companies by taking a holistic design perspective and approach. We are very happy and honored to have you all here today. And before we move on to Pamela and Erik, I would like to give the floor to Damien. Damien will inspire you with various theories, models, and best practice cases you can incorporate within your own association.
Okay, thank you, Anouk. Can I see the slides, please? Yes. So as Anouk mentioned, the topic of today is staying relevant by innovating the core of our association. Well, as Anouk mentioned, I do a lot of innovation projects. I do that for various types of organizations. So I've been able to really see in the various kitchens of associations, organizations, profit and non-profit. So I'm not an expert in this specific sector, but therefore I think it's also very nice every time when I go into a new project, I always take a look is what are we actually talking about? So what is actually an association? You can see it and also here on the screen. This is just then also definition that I found online. So an organization or group of individuals affiliated with one another who share a common purpose, interest or mission and exist for the mutual enrichment and advancement of their membership. So what is nice about this definition is that it's open. There's really a lot of interpretations actually also to actually further craft your association. And what is nice is that certain things are actually highlighted here. So we're talking about a common purpose. What is our common purpose? What is our common interest? What is our mission? Is this mission always fixed, or does this also actually change over time? And it is also about mutual enrichment, advancement of our memberships. So we're not doing this for ourselves, we're doing this for the members that we serve. And I think that is something very important that we should always take into consideration, even if we are an organization, association, or other type of community working together for a common purpose. So what kind of core activities do associations actually provide? Like I told before, I'm not an expert, but I've a quick Google search found various pillars that are actually coming back quite often. It's about learning, it's about various kind of programs, classes, certification, for instance, that coming forward. It's about knowledge, sharing knowledge via platforms, for instance, capturing knowledge, those kind of aspects. We're talking about communities, events, meetings, for instance, those kind of things. And it's, for instance, also about advocacy, then also making sure that the voice of our members are also being heard at various kind of stakeholders. So I think every association is different. Every association maybe have different kind of pillars, put maybe also different emphasis on the pillars out there, and therefore also the activities that they are actually engaging in. So what is actually your core of your association? I think that's also very important to think about, and also take into consideration that this core is always melting. So we therefore need to reinforce the core of our association, or we also need to reimagine the core. Maybe we should replace that. And I think a nice example is the one of Kodak. As you can see over here, Kodak was very much also a leader in the field of photography. They even invented the first digital camera. Steve Sesson actually invented this digital camera. But when this concept was actually presented then also to the board, they actually then also mentioned like, okay, our current business model is so strong, why would we actually replace it then also for a new kind of business model? So then there's also this idea was put aside, and from there, actually, digitalization went further, right? So it was not only about digital technology, but it was also about the democratization of technology, because now elements of a digital camera, the chips, the sensor, all those elements and also together. These were separate modules that new kind of startups, new kind of companies could actually leverage, build together, and also, by doing so, creating also new kind of products and propositions. The smartphone, the action camera, different kind of cameras actually came forward. So by doing so, they actually missed the boat. They actually missed the opportunity actually to be also relevant in the new generation. So if we talk about innovation, it's also very important to think about the various innovation horizons. We can talk about the core, about incremental innovation, improving what we already are providing, but it can also be more adjacent kind of innovation. So really seeing, can we serve different kind of customers, or could we actually provide new kind of products or services to actually the current customers that we serve. But it's also sometimes about transformational, really thinking about creating new markets, and then by doing so, really broadening the horizon. So when we think about innovation, also reflect for yourself, how much are we actually investing in innovation? And if so, how much are we actually investing in our core, in our adjacent activities, but also in transformational aspects? Cool. So then I would also like to introduce this book by Peter Hinson, The Day After Tomorrow. So what's actually the value then also of innovation? Well, he basically mentioned in this book that we should provide 70%, we should invest in our current, basically in the current value that we provide. We should try to optimize that even more. We should invest 20% in the day of tomorrow, and then actually 10% in the day after tomorrow, which is then also more transformational. And he basically mentioned in his book that the payback is the other way around. So the payback of 70% incremental is 10% and the payback of more transformational, the 10% is actually 70%. The risk is maybe higher, but nevertheless, if you find a new kind of proposition that is actually disrupting, the payback is actually much higher. But the issue is that a lot of organizations, and I guess also some of the associations actually tuning in here today, is that we not always get to the opportunity to actually get to innovation. And this sometimes has to do, and these are not my words, these are the words of Peter Hinson, the so-called shit of yesterday. So that is actually that we are dealing with the problems of yesterday, the issues of yesterday are actually holding us back in actually thinking about the future and providing the value that is actually needed to stay relevant. And well, even though a lot of companies maybe have the ambition to invest 70-20 and then 10%, in reality it's often 93% and also in today, and then only 7% in tomorrow, not even thinking about the transformational aspect of innovation. So I think that it's also important to also reflect upon yourself. How important is innovation and how much are you actually investing in it? So here I have also an example of the Society for Scholarly Publishing, and they had a yearly event, and this was cancelled due to Corona. So they really had to look then also for a way to generate revenue. They actually we're looking like what are we actually providing, and are there maybe other propositions that we can actually push forward a little bit more. So they looked into their member directory. There's a lot of opportunities there, and they said, well, maybe we can actually improve that, and by doing so, maybe balance a little bit, offset a little bit the value that we actually lost. So we want to provide more value to the customers, but we also want to provide more revenue for our association. Well, they actually validated and also the value with various through various kind of interviews, and by doing so, they also saw that there was a big challenge about, for instance, getting traffic then also to this member directory, and they actually had a look. Well, the event calendar was, for instance, very successful, and they actually transported this then also to this new environment, making sure that the traffic would actually create certain synergies. So, and next to that, to create even more traffic, they added also listings for various freelancers for free, to also making sure that they actually contribute to the current situation, and by doing so, also, also creating more traffic there. Well, of course, it's a big investment. There's a lot of risk actually there. So they actually work together and also with a soft launch, making sure that they really get out the various kinks, making sure that the proposition is actually fitting. And they actually needed to do that because there was a lot of things, minor things that could actually make or break their big pivot. They also looked into, for instance, Quick Connect. There's also a new proposition that they provided, so the kind of matchmaking on their actual community, on their platform, where people could search for support. They could actually get connected with people, and if it's connected, if it's completed, then also this interaction, then actually this person would actually be available to mentor somebody else. So it was really an interesting matchmaking feature that they included, which they also really had to test and also with their various audience. And the third thing that they did is also because of extra stimulated during and also Corona was, for instance, and also the pushing forward of this online video library, really thinking about the pillar of knowledge, not only sending out various texts, but also thinking about different kind of formats to actually share knowledge. And not only video, you can see also here on the side that there is also text connected to it. So also the synergy between different types of content is quite nicely done in this example. So yeah, as you can see, SSP really has been busy the last period to make these kind of pivots. And I think it's also important that we need to make these pivots also in normal situations. Innovations is always relevant. There's always not only challenges, but also a lot of opportunities out there to be more relevant as an association, and we should be open to that. A last example then also here with regard to an association is here, the BSC AI. So this is about the building service contractors, and this is normally then also more focused on higher level management and on the organization as such. but they really also looked into, well, we actually see that there is also a lot of issues with the various workers. There actually we should also see how can we actually, focus on safety, disinfection, and those kind of aspects, and making sure we create a new program that we also prepare the workers that are actually now need to work during this situation. So opportunities, they are always. Sometimes they are more present than other times, but nevertheless, I think it's a very nice way to keep your eyes open. So, let's see. Well, if you look into innovation, there's a lot of innovation that fails. So there's a lot of risk also with investing in innovation. And it's not about technology that actually fails, but the main reason why innovation fails actually has to do with the mismatch with the needs of the end user, the needs of our members, the needs of our target group. So that is most important, that we really also have empathy with them, that we truly understand them, and sometimes that doesn't go well. So if we, for instance, look here at the statistic by Bain & Co., 80% of all CEOs think that they provide an excellent service to their customers, 80%, but only 8% of their customers agree with them. So there's a big gap between what we think and what actually is the realization there. And I think also this also might play an important role then also with associations. So it's very interesting to look into what kind of customer research do you actually do? How do you actually capture the insights of your community? Are you using surveys? How do you actually develop those surveys? Is it based on your own interpretation? Is it actually more open? Do we sometimes also limit the way we actually capture data? Because if it's maybe too open, is it maybe also very complex to actually analyze that data? So there are a lot of ways to actually capture this perspective of your customers, of your members, of your target group. And there's more than only surveys. Nevertheless, I see from my personal experience that a lot of organizations are really relying heavily on surveys. But there's a lot more out there that we can actually make use of. Yes? Yeah, and I love this quote. So this quote is by David Ogilvy, and he says, "The problem with market research is that people don't think what they feel, they don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say." If we want to provide value, we want people to engage. We want people to come to our conferences, to engage with our online platforms. But what they say in a survey that they might join, etc., doesn't necessarily relate to action. So therefore, a survey is not always the best method to truly understand if a new service, if a new proposition, if a new product is going to be successful. Yeah, so opinions is not the same as behavior. So I like this overview, and this is just a couple of tools that can be used. You see surveys in here, you see interviews, you see focus group, but a lot of these things are very much focused on the attitude of a certain target group. And it can be either be more quantitative of nature, the data that we acquire, or it can be also more qualitative of nature. But like I said before, it's not necessarily always about the opinion, about the attitude of people. It's actually about their actual behavior. And there are a lot of tools actually out there which actually can provide a lot of value. But nevertheless, we should also be open to these new kind of research methods to actually capture the insights of our audience. So the added value of, for instance, observations, just to name one, you see surveys on the left side, and you see then also actually this line of visibility. We can actually only observe what people are saying. And we often send these surveys at a moment which is not within the context. So that means that they are filling it in a day, a week, a month, a year, maybe even longer, after we are trying to get some feedback on a certain moment. And we even not looking into what people are actually doing. And that's nice with observations. You can actually also talk to people at the moment, at where something takes place. And you can also see what people are actually doing. But this is other kind of methods that you should actually use for this. So this is just an example. This is, for instance, then also with usability tests, combination and also with interviews, is that if you segment correctly, if you truly know the different kind of type of members that are actually part of your association, and you're able to get 3 of them within a room for an hour or so, and you're actually going through, for instance, a new kind of proposition, and you're not focusing on their opinion, but actually how they interact with this, maybe in a pilot or in a small experiment. With 3 of them, you will find roughly 70% of the issue. That's a lot. Well, make it 5, then you got 85%. So this is really a different way of looking also in capturing customer insight. Yes, and maybe the end value is small, but nevertheless, the value that you get is quite important, because it's not only about what is the issue, you can also actually have that interaction, why something is an issue, where is it an issue? Is it here, is it there, is it with this feature, with that feature? Where are people looking at, for instance? Those kind of things are super valuable then also that you can actually leverage to making sure you have a nice proposition and you serve your audience in the best way possible. All right. So an innovation methodology that we use a lot within the university, within UMIO, the unit that I work for, is design thinking. Well, you see then also this Venn diagram here on the screen behind me. And what is nice is that there are different aspects that are important. So he basically says design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirement of business success. And as you can see here, it says start here on the top. And that means whatever we're going to do, whatever we're going to provide, what kind of innovation we're actually developing, it should first be desirable. It first should fit with the needs, the challenges, the ambitions of our audience. And from there, we have a look into what kind of technology can we leverage. Maybe some kind of platform technology, a new kind of application, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. I mean, there's a lot there. But first, we should really making sure, are we solving the right issues? How we solve it only comes later. And also the third bubble that you can see here, the business perspective, also making sure it's, for instance, economically viable. For instance, think about certain structures and processes within the organizations that might need to pivot. So you start from a desirability point of view, and from there you start this dance between those various elements, making sure whatever you're going to design is a balance between all 3 elements. So you're in a current situation, you have a certain business challenge or an ambition, you want to do something within your association, and you want to go to this final solution, to this future situation, but how do we get there? And as I said before, there are different kind of innovation methodologies that you can use, but I would like to go a little bit deeper on design thinking, which is a method that we actually use ourselves. Because often we go too fast, we think too much in solutions, instead of really thinking about what is actually the problem. So this is a double diamond model, leveraged and also from design thinking. And as you can see here, there are 2 important phases. We need to make sure we are solving the right problem. And that's not that easy because we have our own biases. And sometimes our own expertise can be a limiting factor. And we need to solve the problem right. I often see that we have the solution. We need to create this. But who says that there is not 2 other, 3 others, 5 others, 100, maybe 1 million other solution directions? And nevertheless, if you have maybe an idea, the details do really matter, the various features that can really make or break a solution. So solving the right problem, solving the problem right. So if you look at this picture, and this is, for instance, your ambition, you want to help this child. You look into the eyes of this child and you say, well, this child is not feeling very comfortable. And you might say, well, how might we make the MRI scanning experience less scary for children? So maybe you can use the chat at this moment. Just type down in the chat what could be interesting solutions to make the MRI scanning experience less scary for children. Can it be a digital product? Can it be a service? Can it be a physical object? Do you get an idea, Pamela? Eric, what could we do to make this MRI scanning less scary for children?
Make a drawing inside.
I do it.
Make a drawing, yeah?
Yeah.
Eric?
Or just projecting a nice image or movie or so
Yeah,
within the MRI. That would
to get the mind actually over.
to
Yeah,
get the mind
yeah.
a bit turned off.
So this is already nice. If we just pose these kind of questions, how might we questions? This is, I think, a nice way to frame a certain challenge. Is that I can ask the question to Pamela, I can ask the question to Eric, can ask it then to Anouk, can ask it to the people here behind the screens basically, and everybody will come up with ideas. There might be some overlap, there might be some differences, but that's really the nice thing, the power of also creativity. And if you frame that nicely, yeah, we have a...
I do have a suggestion in
Ah,
the
yes,
chat.
please. All
Yeah,
right,
so
yes.
maybe
Out
it's
of the-
nice to just interrupt then and
Of course,
share
Anouk.
this.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, well, Alessandro says music is an option.
Music is an
Yeah.
option.
Yeah, to make MRI experiences less scary for children.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and then you could think about what kind of music. Is it more, is it the kind of music that the child listens to, or is it more like ambient kind of music? I mean, that's a nice first concept where you can build further on. Maybe you can combine it with Eric's idea. So what we often do is that we have these kind of design challenges. We just hang it up on in our offices, and then we just let people come up with ideas, hanging up post-its, and then we can see what's nice, what can we combine? And by doing so, we get to innovative solutions. Well, as I said before, you should also really indicate what's the underlying issue. Is the child looking like this because he or she feels alone, or is he or she uncomfortable, or he or she really afraid of the unknown? And if you reframe those challenges then also into a multi question, you will get actually different kind of solutions. So you can really steer creativity. It's not only the creative genius in the room that come up with ideas. If you reframe the problem statement correctly, ideas almost come automatically. And design thinking is, I think, a nice methodology that you can really leverage for that. So this is an example. How might we make the MRI scanning experience less scary for children? Siemens had a look then also to this challenge, and they created this MRI pass application. Then the child could actually indicate what he or she would bring, what he or she is afraid of. That would also be sent then also to the specialist, and by doing so, the specialist could actually take care then also of the child, and by doing so, lower then also the anxiety. But Lego actually also worked on this challenge. Why Lego? Oh, let's see what they came up with. So they came up with the I Love MRI Lego kit, and this would then also be sent to the child, and the child could already play with it, and by doing so, already imagine how it would look like, and by doing so, lower the anxiety by actually playing with it. Very different solution, not technical of nature, but nevertheless, maybe even more effective than the first one. Who knows? Something we should test out, right? And the last one I really like, this is from General Electric, and they actually created a full experience. This experience already started from home. So they actually had a look at Disney, Peter Pan, the Peter Pan experience, pirates, and they actually sent a little letter then also to the child, to the parent, and then also the child would get a treasure map, an eye patch. And then when the child would actually then also come to the hospital, there's then also the specialist with a little parrot there, and it really was an act basically. And if you look at the MRI scanner then here, it's covered with vinyl. It looks like a pirate ship. And then also coming back to the idea of Eric, you could then even the walls were painted in a certain way. So digital products, physical products, services or experiences, divergent thinking is very important to really think about different kind of solution directions. And this is the same with your association. Maybe you come up with an idea, there are different pivots that you can make, different directions you could explore further. All right, so if you came up with an idea, it's just maybe a term, it's maybe a sentence, you can write it down maybe on a A4 paper, but then you really start. You really need to start prototyping, and I love this quote also by Tom Wojcik, who says, prototyping is the conversation you have with your ideas. So I don't know if anybody of you at home ever created a nice vase during a workshop, like you see over here. But what happens on the spinning disc, and you have this nice image of this vase that you would like to make for maybe your partner or for your grandmother. And the first time when you really touch the clay, something happens that you didn't expect. The clay goes directions that you didn't expect. And by doing so, you need to adjust, you need to change. So ideas are nice, but bringing them into practice needs a lot of adjustment. And this kind of experiential learning between analytics, thinking, and actually doing is something that is very important also for innovation. So I also always stimulate managers and people that are really working on innovation to make their hands dirty, to really think about various types of prototypes. All right, so just this sketch is quite nice that you see that you can have a logical progression of prototypes, and at a certain moment it's maybe too much expertise needed. Well, then you bring in those kind of design capabilities that can help you out. But everybody can sketch. Everybody can make a first mock-up. And every time when you make these kind of design artifacts, these kind of prototypes, you have something that you can touch, that you can reflect upon. You get this experiential learning just as making this clay face. So these feedback loops, either if you have a sketch, it further develops your idea. And from a sketch, you can make a mock-up. By doing so, you can reflect on the idea of your sketch, and etc. until you actually get to a final product. And a product can be something very tangible, but it can also be an experience, as I shared before. Well, we are talking about reinventing the core of our association. So that also means that we need to think about not only the value proposition, not only about our product and our service. It's not only about the customer segment, and you can use then also the value proposition canvas for this. You can see the book then here on the top of on the bottom left. It's not only about the proposition that's connected to that, but you should also really see how is it actually embedded within your organization. What kind of consequences have this proposition for the way we run our organization or association? So these tools, I think, very handy practical tools. I will not explain them in detail, but nevertheless, if you want to know more about this, just buy the book, get started, and otherwise also just get facilitator in-house to help you along the way. Well, from there, actually a lot of creativity and innovation get started with regard to your business model. And another book which is a nice add-on to this is the Business Model Navigator. So this is by St. Gallen, and they actually have 55 different kind of business model innovations, cards, inspiration cards, that you can actually project on your business model and to see, well, what kind of opportunities lie maybe when I actually apply these kind of cards. Well, I'm just going to highlight 6 of them over here. So the first one could be, for instance, Aikido. So with Aikido, they mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the martial arts of Aikido, but Aikido is not about pressing force upon your opponent, but it's actually leveraging the force of another. So the example, for instance, of Airbnb is that they didn't go head-to-head with Booking.com, but they looked for a niche, somewhere, a market that nobody actually was actually paying attention to, leveraging that market, and from there actually became the biggest one. Or for instance, freemium, Dropbox. Think about, well, maybe we now have memberships, but this membership actually makes it, it's hard to actually acquire a new kind of member. So maybe we should make it free. Well, how would that actually influence our business model? And maybe what should we then actually then also create a different kind of business model or revenue model around it? Or for instance, leveraging customer insights from YouTube, for instance, or that you don't only have to provide the content, but actually the members there play an important role in providing that. Or for instance, if you think about a platform, it's not only about the members, it's also about other stakeholders and how you bring them together within a community. Or maybe shop in shop. You don't have to provide everything yourself. Uber Eats actually is actually a platform to provide value of opportunity for others. And the last one is, for instance, from trash to cash. Maybe there are a lot of resources out there which are not used or seen as trash, but can actually be used for added value. So an example here of Freitag, this is a German company that makes bags out of the protective seals of lorries, of what's the English word for? Yeah, lorry, right? So yeah, so they use this seal basically. They recycle the seal, and out of that they actually have a nice durable material, which then also can be used to make bags from trash to cash. Like I said, these are inspiration cards. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But then this is also a little bit about serendipity. Another book is, for instance, the 10 Types of Innovation. And here you can see that the business model, there are different aspects that you can innovate. I will not go through this in detail, but you can actually use this book then also in the same way. And the different elements that you can innovate, it's not only about the proposition, it's, for instance, also about the partners that you work together with, or how you, for instance, not create one proposition, but maybe a nice portfolio with synergies between various products or services. So if you look at Apple, it's not only about the iPhone, it's also the integration, the working together of various online services and actually the iPhone. So this 10 Types of Innovation book is, I think, very nice way to get some inspiration. And inside the book, they mention if you really want to be disruptive, if you really want to be a unicorn basically in the sector, you should at least have 5 or 6 of those kind of disruptions. So of this innovation is actually present. So this can also be a way to push yourself a little bit harder and making sure that you create something which is also sustainable. Because if you only have one creative innovation, then yeah, it's also much more easier for the competition to also get to the same level as you are. All right, so this is an overview of various relevant books. So as you can see, the value proposition design and business model generation book is, I think, the basis where you can really play around in who are we serving, what are we serving, and what is the implication for our organization. The other 2 books of 10 Types of Innovation and the Business Model Navigator are a nice way to get the creativity flowing, to think more about your business model. And then the books on the bottom is more for inspiration. Change by Design is a nice introduction on design thinking. Creative Confidence is a nice way about creativity, to really think about how can I become more creative. And then we also have Sprint and Lean Startup, which are a nice way to really come from an idea and test it in real life. And then also the day after tomorrow. I think we're also going to share the presentation later, so you have all the time to have a look at what were the books that Damien already mentioned, and then we can actually you can actually order them, and then from there you can get started. And otherwise, you know where to find us. Cool. So we have 2 guests. This was my side of innovation, but of course it's very interesting to also see the perspectives of people that have actually been innovating in their own way, right? So let's dive a little bit deeper into this panel discussion, and I would really like to talk about pivoting. So pivoting is from basketball, where we have one foot really grounded, and with the other foot we're actually exploring different ways that we could actually change the course of our, in this case, association. So let's dive deeper into pivoting. And Eric, we had the opportunity already spar a little bit beforehand, and you also shared a bit on how you actually were involved in your association in the pivot from, you said from Congress. So maybe you can explain a bit more on
knowledge transfer to
you focus more on congresses to an expert plan. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, thank you, Damien. It started about 10, 15 years back in time when the agenda, your sort of conference agenda was really simple. You had one meeting a year. Everyone was joining there from the field. These were bulky meetings with 30, 40,000 people. But that's the past. I think we have new, and gradually also the associations were noticing that the competition was increasing on the one hand. On the other hand, so there were many more conferences, often smaller platforms where you had more dedicated, more focused knowledge transfer. And that was drawing from the major conferences all the people towards these smaller podia. And at the same time, also one of the consequences of that was that the commitment to a certain meeting was also gradually dropping. So people were less inclined to attend a meeting on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. So they were cherry picking. So this is a nice conference. This is very focused and just exactly offering the knowledge that I need to. So my society was facing that problem as well. It's a medium to large size society, and what I thought was they made an analysis on what the needs were, exactly as Damien told. So the problem was clear. You had declining numbers. The program was also less attractive, and that was a sort of spiraling down. So what they thought of was to increase commitment on the one hand, because people, scientists especially, the new generation scientists, they like to be much more actively involved. So they're not passively sitting back and letting the tsunami of knowledge coming over them, but they are actually like to participate in the discussions and to be actively involved in a society.
Yeah. So what were different ways how you actually facilitated that? So how did you actively create this kind of active attitude then also of your membership? So what would
so one of the means that they and it was very effective is you have these working groups. And the good thing about working groups is not only that they are active and involved, but at the same time also they are more committed because they need to go, because they are member of that working group. And the other means that they also were thinking of is enhancing visibility by producing guidelines, guidelines that are really highly cited, but also that sort of bring the society as an opinion leader. So, and people would like to join that opinion leader. And the other thing is that also in the organization of the conference itself, they looked more to smaller podia that were very targeted and more interactive. And that leads to a more interactive knowledge transfer and exchange most of the times between the scientists, the attending scientists, and the conference itself.
So it sounds quite human. It's really about organizing a certain activity, or it's maybe changing a process. I don't hear you talk a lot about technology. So now
that's the third
maybe it's
one.
not important.
So maybe really good that you introduced that point. I think where it comes to the technology, the new generation scientists interact in a different way. So there is a much higher focus on social media. That they would like to to discuss with via technology about science. So what is really one of the nice things about the conference that we organized in 2019 was that you had the electronic posters boards, where you could offer a podium for many more, and especially junior scientists, to expose their work in a less passive way than the classical poster sessions that we had before.
Okay, so you really also make a distinction between the older generation and the new generation really working. So
No,
do you see that as a clear cut, or are that the two target groups that you're actually serving, or is this, how do you actually deal with that and having a picture of your target group?
I think in essence there is a difference between the embracement of new technology by the older generation and to which I calculate myself, and the younger ones. But on the other hand, it's also about a change with time, that people are more they have different needs, and also being exposed to the opportunities that new technology offer.
So if we talk about the needs, we also talked about needs a lot here, about acquiring that perspective. How do you acquire then also the needs of your members within? Is it then service? Is it interviews? Is it focus group, or different methods? I'm just curious. How do you actually capture the needs? Are they part of a board maybe, or?
I'm part of a board of one society, and I'm a sort of active member in another society, the bigger society. I've been membering also working groups. But what I do see is that they create a sort of membership atmosphere. These new tools that people feel more associated with that society. And then they're also more easily willing to attend that one, because it's a sort of part of the family. And we like to create back that feeling that in the remote past, was the actual
Yeah.
default.
Well, that's quite interesting. So you talk about the culture of that community, and maybe that's also a big difference between organizations that are here to serve you and associations which are really for us, by us.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit,
Yeah.
bit like that. Pamela, let's move to you. Did also your association make a big pivot in the last 10 years?
Yeah, so when we were pre-discussing this, I think I realized how old-fashioned we are, and I think how old-fashioned many scientific associations are, like mine. I mean, indeed, I very much recognize what Erik just said, is that we really started as a kind of organizing a conference for scientists in a field to come together. But we do see that there are different needs. And indeed, I also recognize the needs of a younger generation, for example, who don't really only come for a science, but they would also like to get information about career perspectives, about publishing, about the kind of side aspects of being a scientist. And that is something that they very much need. So what we have done, for example, we have a Young Scientist Forum. So we have a part of our association is actually run by the junior scientists who really actively come with ideas, and we even get a part of the budget to organize certain things that are very much interested, because they also have a much closer contact with other junior scientists. So that is one of the things. Another, a very recent one, and that is because of the COVID crisis that we've had, is that really we had to really go from a kind of very old-fashioned way of, okay, we have to come together and we are friends and we do good science, to really thinking about hybrid ways of doing that. So use online means to meet. Think about the value of that. So what is the value of being there, present online and showing your science? And what is the value of physically being together and being able to network? So I think that was also very much stimulated creativity, because we had to. So there was, we kind of felt that something had to change, but I think it was tremendously accelerated by the COVID crisis in the last year.
You really see that as being embraced by the culture. Actually, this new, it's been disrupted then also by
I think we are going to have a kind of transformation time. I think now everybody's very much keen to just go back to the normal.
Yeah.
But I do expect that after a while we will really look and find a good balance between how it was before and a kind of forced different way, and we will be able to learn from that. And I actually experienced that as a positive thing, that we had a really, because as I mentioned, these kind of associations are run by scientists, so we are not professionals, and we felt that things had to change, and this really forced us to sit down and say, okay, we have a problem now, so how are we going to organize this year's conference, or how are we going to bring people together, or how are we going to influence the ERC, so the European Commission with research funding and so on. So this is really something that has a kind of accelerated the process, which is positive, I think.
Cool, interesting. So there's also a little bit on the how, and how about the what? What do we actually offer? I started off with the various pillars. Do you also have these kind of pillars in your strategic plan of your association? Do these things actually change? Is there now also maybe more emphasis on one pillar compared to another one?
Yes, so we do, and I think they have kind of organically grown throughout the years. So indeed, we started just by organizing a conference, then we thought of an importance of the educational aspect of the society for younger generation. Then we realized how important, especially for our field, it is to come in contact with industry, so which are kind of end users of the research that we are doing. So how to attract industry to join us, and not only to come to conferences as a sponsor, but actually think with us how we can change the field. So, and as the last one, as I mentioned, is indeed, can we lobby for more research funding or for our field? But this is a kind of always, it does not come as a strategy, if you mean. So we do. I mean, I really very much like to see all the tools that you are suggesting, but I have to admit that we never used any of these. I think it's more that we as a council we sit together and say, oh well, we should do something about this. How do we do that? Which is unfortunate, because I think in the end it would be very much more effective to do it the way you present it.
You know where to find me, so that's
Yeah.
always good. For the people at home, if you have questions for me, for Pamela, for Eric, please feel free then also to use the chat. Anouk is here to grab the attention when needed. Eric, so culture, right? So we talked about culture. Let's talk about identity. It's always interesting when I look at associations. There's always abbreviations, which sounds so technical always. It's just like, okay. So if I think about culture, if I think about identity, I think about something warm. And when I hear then also the story of Pamela, I hear humanity. I feel this kind of warmth.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about the identity of your association and what makes this warmth actually?
Yeah, I think that it's a very good point, and it's also during the recent COVID crisis that became also more clear that what really matters, what distinguishes a real live conference from or association from a virtual experience via online. And there's no doubt that we in the end will find a sort of midway, but also people realize that what the society extra offers via these podia, but also via the annual meeting. And that depends a bit on the stage in your career where you are. I think for senior scientists, what we generally miss with Zoom sessions, that it's very focused, it's very professional, but you don't have the room to sort of for small talk, for an interaction, to have a beer together and brainstorm about new collaborations and things. So it's too centered, and this is what the society does offer, these podia where you can find each other and then look further. For the younger generation, it's more about networking and absorbing knowledge. And I think the online, for the first, they really need live podia.
Mm-hmm.
For the second, I think the online webinars that are flooding now, they work perfectly. So, does that address your question a bit?
Yeah, well, well, I was maybe also, but I love always the saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we talked about culture already over here, and. Yeah, I'm just curious also a little bit, like, do you actually need then also a strategy? If the culture is good, if we find our own ways, do we actually need a strategy? Do you have a, is it actually needed
it's a very good point. The thing is, what you have now is by no means a guarantee of what you will have tomorrow. So you need to sort of take measures that commit really people to be part of the family, of the society. And I've just, and also Pamela, I've given some examples by which we like to affect this. But you need to be active and not sitting back and waiting until the miracle will again happen.
Okay.
I do have a question come from the audience. So shall I drop the question?
Yeah.
Well, in attracting the younger demographics, it seems that the conscious teams center around personalized connection, creative stimulation, and making them feel as a valued member of the community.
Yeah.
Once you've attracted the younger members, how do you think you can ensure you keep them? Interesting question.
That's a very good point.
Who would like to take it?
Pamela, you
Ladies first?
No, I think it is very challenging, and I think how do you do that? I think it's in general. I think it's a challenging question, because I think you also asked why it is important to keep this kind of your community. It is also because the competition is rising, and there are more associations coming in a similar fields. And you actually want to remain attractive, and that is for everybody, but in particular for the younger generations, who are kind of going really, they are shopping. They do not have a connection to one society as many senior members do, and that is really by innovating, by finding ways to differentiate yourself from somebody else, and that is not easy. I mean, by no means. And in the end, I mean, I often hear and that sounds like a funny thing, but they often say, well, what we remember is how great the conference party was. And these are the things that we think are details, but I think they're extremely important, especially if you really try to kind of create the culture that is attractive to come back.
Yeah, I think there's also something we see within our university, is that student life is more than only classes. It's also what's happening in the city, outside of the classrooms, in the late evenings. Eric, what would you like to add to that?
I fully agree what Pamela just told. But I think what our society tries to do is also to for different career levels, to offer some incentives to the junior scientists. For instance, through awards, through paper of the years, through fellowships they can offer, but also by recognition of their achievement, really, even though at a very junior stage, to invite them over to be member of a working group. And that, in this way, we try to sort of commit them slightly more. But that's a difficult task with all the competing and often smaller societies.
Yeah, well, within innovation, we also sometimes becomes much more important for organizations to be trustworthy, right? So it's maybe not always about, of course, we need to have good products and good services, but sometimes that becomes a commodity. And then it's about trust, and then it's about brand love, and then it's about the drinks afterwards, and then it's about those little social events, which then sometimes are even more important. Well, it's an important aspect, and also of getting this attachment to a certain association. Let's talk. Is there another question?
No, not yet. So
Not yet.
please feel free to ask any questions and drop them in the chat.
Yeah. Financials. Let's talk some money. So I think in the end, whatever organization, associations you are, profit, non-profit, still, whatever we provide as value, there should be some kind of compensation. So it is important to address. And if we talk about also being relevant, reinventing the core of your organization, in order for your engine to run, it should also have fuel, for instance. So financials, is that a dirty word within your association? Or how is that being then also addressed, or is it,
It's not really. We are a fully non-profit organization, so I think for us, we do have members, we do have a membership, but that is really just to cover costs, and everything goes back to the members as well, indeed, in the form of fellowships and awards and conferences and all kinds of activities that we are organizing. What we did realize is because we are dependent, so our membership is connected to conferences. So and that means that like this year, if a conference does not take place, then we have a problem, especially as if you are a non-profit organization. So that is, of course, a kind of that's the model that we have chosen. But on the other hand, we do realize how important it is to have some backup in order to be able to be healthy and go on and still offer what you normally offer. So it is something that we it's important. It's very important to be transparent about it. It's very important also to show how we spend the money that comes in. But since we are a fully non-profit organization, I think it's less of an issue than for some others.
okay, so there's no need at this moment to have a look at, for instance, the revenue model, the cards that are, for instance, shared. Like, is there something to further explore at this moment? You say, well, we've got it covered. Our core is.
Yeah, we had that a couple of years ago, and that is when we changed our way of membership. And that was needed, both financially, but also in terms of member numbers, for various reasons. And that is also when we completely changed, just a couple of years ago, we changed the way we kind of give membership to be more secure in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eric, How's it with you?
Yeah, I think it's about the same here. It's a sine qua non that we have some financial support to keep the society alive. And I think the most expensive part is obviously the annual conference. And I think the financials are being provided by memberships. But the main part is by financial support, and that may be slightly easier in the biomedical field or the medical field, by financial support from the pharma and from small SMEs. That we define certain levels of memberships, so you can grow up to a premium membership if you are committed to the society and almost lifelong, or 5 years or more, then you can become a premium member, and you have certain privileges. For instance, where you can put your stand, and that you are prioritized to organize a certain session, for instance. And of course, all within the criteria of integrity, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more or less we shape the activities to the financials that we have. So that's simply what it is. And sometimes we need to cut down a bit, and sometimes we can spend a bit more. But this is also a non-profit organization. So,
okay.
And we need to fund 3 people that full time that are involved in organization of all the activities.
Okay.
So
it seems like you've got it covered within your association. Things are moving, but it goes organically. And if you look back at this presentation here, and we talk about innovation, what are maybe 1 or 2 things that you would actually take home, and maybe the next time when you have a meeting, Eric, you say, well, hey, this is maybe interesting to further explore. What's there maybe 1 or 2 things that actually triggered you to maybe discuss? Hey, that's maybe interesting to look into.
Yeah, then I come back to this sense of community, and I think the best element that we had here in Maastricht when organizing the ES in 2019 was that we have a huge party at the castle. And that's, I hear that all the, especially the juniors, saying, well, that's a binder. People love that. And that's also where they can have an interaction, low level, with through all layers of their career. So I think that's definitely a recommend. And when it comes to the technology, I would say, I think personally, the benefit was that it was organizing conference. It meant a lot to me because of it. Learned me to organize better than I did before. But also, it was although a load of work, it was also even though I have massive support from local convention bureaus. But it was a lifetime experience, and also good for my visibility. So in the end, definitely recommend.
Cool. Okay. Pamela, what was I think also interesting?
May I interrupt for a little
You have
moment?
another
Because I do have a question, and it's about the financials we just discussed. So perhaps it's good to drop this question right now.
Go for it.
Well, the question is, how do you see the future financials of your society, as there will be now also a hybrid part attending, meaning less income, lower fee than life. How do you adapt to that, and how do you see this changing?
Yeah, that's a very good point, but maybe Pamela, you
Please
first.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, the future will tell what for an impact that will have on the financials, but I wouldn't be surprised that will reduce the income, especially from the registration fees, by at least 1/3 to 1/2. But it's difficult to predict, because we hope that people really are in for socializing again and interacting again. So hopefully the soup will be less hot than than it's now sort of considered to be served. But I don't know.
But with a hybrid format, you also have the opportunity to reach a wider audience. So maybe
that's
the
true.
cost of the
But registration fees for the online conferences are much lower. So it's about almost tenfold lower than that of the real life experience. Although the cost may also be a bit less.
Mhm.
Difficult to predict how that will work in the end.
Yeah. Pamela?
Yeah, I think hybrid form is, well, we're actually dealing with it right now because our next meeting is in September and we are probably going to offer it as a hybrid. And that turns out to be much more expensive than having it either physical or only online. So for us, it's a slightly different because we have local organizers organizing and taking responsibility over financials of a meeting. And the membership is only very small part of the registration fee, so I don't see immediately big problems there. It is more indeed for the organizers themselves, and what I'm hoping is that indeed we will look into the ways to attract more people simply by the let's say online part of the hybrid conference. That is what we are aiming for.
Do you also have like local chapters? So that could also be interesting that those hubs can actually play an important role to have that physical connection still, right?
Exactly, and that is exactly what will happen this year because in our case it will be in Portugal. So what we expect is that many Portuguese will be physically present and some other Europeans, but the people from the US will probably not be able, or China, Asia will not be able to travel, but then we are hoping to attract them through online participation.
But it's not that these chapters are active throughout the whole year, or it's more like...
Yeah, they are definitely. We have, so all our national chapters, they are highly active. And indeed, it is also how kind of we organize the conferences, that it always goes to another national chapter, so they are kind of locally responsible for that. So that can definitely play a role.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we say, how might we create lovers of our associations only online? So is that possible, or is that just a myth? Is it possible, or should we have that party at that nice castle, having the drinks and having or is it possible online? Do you see some opportunity, or is it an add-on? It's a way to get the momentum in between, for instance, or for convenience reasons. But yeah, I'm just putting it out there. I think that is also maybe interesting. As we've also now seen during Corona, we had to pivot. Is then, the community maybe it became even stronger because the lack of interaction.
That depends a bit on the size of the society. For smaller, it might work that way, but for larger societies, they probably that will be more difficult because the larger the online meeting will be, the more anonymous the people, the attendants will act possibly. So I don't know whether there are ways, unless you have very small breakout rooms that people can interact, but you will miss, and I don't see any opportunities to have that compensated or sort of mimicked in an online setting.
You, Pamela, have you?
Well, I have recently seen a couple of new apps that I think are quite fun to introduce. Whether you can really completely replace it, I think then you really have to be transformative. Then you really have to offer, and then everything that we have seen online in the past year and a half is not sufficient. So I think that will really have to change, be much more virtual, much more, really mimicking your presence. If you really want to get a bit of it, I don't think you can completely, at least not in the setting that we have it, I don't think we can completely replace and kind of take that culture just by the online means. I think it will be very difficult.
Also, maybe interesting from my own experience.
We're just human beings. We like to socialize, to interact, and that is also, I don't know whether that can be emulated.
Yeah, I think there are definitely...
You see some means there.
There are definitely some challenges there. But there are also, as you mentioned, for instance, various apps which are enablers. But the technology itself, I think, will never be, there still be humans behind it to actually. But what is interesting, for instance, the programs that we ran the past year, had to be all online. Intense programs of 6 weeks and a full week of teaching. And we did bond. and we did create. We were productive, maybe sometimes even more productive than we would have been with post-its and flip charts and drawing in a real life session than we would be in an online environment. So some things, yes, cannot be emulated. But still, maybe I was a little bit of a skeptic. But during Corona, I think I've seen a lot is really possible. And so I would really also encourage you, but also at home, to maybe stick that. How might we question in the office and see basically if some creative ideas pop up and maybe do a small part. Pamela, maybe also the same question to you. This presentation that I gave.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two things that really maybe stood out for you. You say, well, this is maybe something I would like to discuss further with.
Yeah, I think it's a very basic, but what struck me most was this kind of division between your core business, the whatever associated and then transformative. I think that is a question that we don't ask ourselves very often, and we should. And especially after a crisis like this one, it's the timing is just right to sit together and really say, okay, how do we see ourselves from 10 years from now, and what is our core business, and what do we have to, invest in order to strengthen it, but also especially this transformative part, I think is very important to differentiate ourselves from everybody else. And I think in general, I mean, I don't think we are doing, worse than the others. We are just all together, all very old-fashioned. But then that is really a good reason just to sit down and think about it in a different way. So I'm hoping that we will do that. So that's what I learned from it.
Yeah, and I think also with innovation, you don't have to put everything in one basket. You can actually also diversify your risk when it comes to innovation. Okay, Anouk, still some questions?
No.
No questions?
No questions anymore.
But I think then we'll get towards the wrap up. So I think a key takeaway for me is that I really love this cultural aspect. I thought that we would be talking more about technology and how that actually, but it's about the human aspect of culture that is actually the driving force behind the association now, in the past, but also definitely in the future. Of course, we can always improve the way we do innovation, etc. But the way we are actually moving forward right now is actually already very nice. And I think that's also a key insight for me. The difference between an organization and an association is this membership, this community. The heart should beat, and from there, things can go. Propositions come and go, can change, digital, physical, the business model as well. We talked about that, the financials and innovation process. Well, I've given you now some books you can read upon, and we can follow up on that. I think, I think some nice key takeaways to also reflect on the listeners and also viewers from home. Anouk, I would like then also to now give the word to you.
Yeah, and before we finally go to the wrap-up, there is one last question coming in from the audience.
Oh, okay.
Questions both to Pamela and Eric. What was your favorite part of hosting your meeting in Maastricht?
If I have to choose one, we had. There were so many.
It's hard to choose one, but
well, you know what I think it was for me. It was the fact that I really felt proud of Maastricht, and I was really proud to show the place, and especially because it's not a place that everybody knows. It's not the first city you think of if you think of the Netherlands. But when the people came, there was so much to show. There was so much to be proud of, and I mean really from food to the city to. We had beautiful weather, by the way, so that was an extra. But really, the fact that it was a full package, and I have to say that. And we are talking about culture, but I think this kind of community in Maastricht and the surrounding, and also how that is being used to organize a conference, really giving it a homely feeling, was a perfect setting for such a conference. So I really think it's the fact that Maastricht itself has really a heart, and it's so easy to show it. That is also, I think, what people remembered most from that conference.
Yeah, the Burgundian lifestyle of Maastricht.
Yeah. And the beauty of it.
But also
really.
the compact size of the city where people can meet without you meet, you never feel lost, huh? And that was one of the things that the people afterwards told me, both of the society and of the attendants, that they were very reluctant at start of Maastricht, of hosting Maastricht, the conference in Maastricht, but they were all sort of gradually having increased enthusiasm about the city, just for that reason. Yeah.
Does
Thank
that
you.
answer? Yeah.
I think so. I think it really answers the question. So thank you. Then we'll finally go to the wrap up of this session. So first of all, Damien, I would like to thank you for this great presentation. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Erik, for this wonderful insights during the panel discussion. Thank you all for sharing this knowledge. And I also think that an important takeaway from this session is that every association, of course, is different, but nevertheless, they can benefit from having these discussions, listening to their members, and also seeing technology as an opportunity instead of a challenge. So let's take away what we learned today into the future of our events. And finally, thank you, audience. It was great that you joined us today. And of course, we hope to welcome you in Maastricht in real life soon.